My name is Christian Tanja. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of the KH Admission Team and an honorary member of the 2022 cohort. I imagine a world where everyone feels empowered to lead change in the world around them.
Hi, my name is Jordyn Sanico. I'm the Admission Outreach Coordinator on the KH Admission Team and an honorary member of the 2022 cohort. I imagine a world where service is joyfully abundant and unconditionally given.
Welcome to the Imagine a World podcast from Knight-Hennessy Scholars. We are here to give you a glimpse into the Knight-Hennessy Scholar community of graduate students, spanning all 7 Stanford schools, including business, education, engineering, humanities, law, medicine, and sustainability. In each episode, we talk with scholars about the world they imagine and what they are doing to bring it to life.
Today, we've got Christian Tanja and Jordyn Sanico, 2 members of the KHS admissions team. During our conversation, you'll hear them both discuss their first-gen college experiences, their commitment to service, what it's like to be a KH team member, and so much more.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Imagine a World. My name is Sydney Hunt, and I am one of your co-hosts. I am a member of the 2023 Knight-Hennessy Scholar cohort and currently a second-year PhD student in electrical engineering. Today is a very, very special episode because we have a lot of newbies on the podcast today. First off, this will be our first episode with a KH team member, which I'm really excited about. So the scholars are a big part of the KH community, but we would not be able to do anything that we are able to do without all the back-end work that comes from the team. And so we're excited to get insights from Jordyn and Christian today. And then the second new thing is we have our new co-host. Welcome to Anson, and please go ahead and introduce yourself. We're so excited to have you on the pod today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Anson. I'm a member of the 2024 cohort, a first-year MD MBA student currently at the School of Medicine, and feel very lucky to be on such a special episode today.
Yeah,
very unique one, too,
I can't wait. Do you want to introduce and say who we're going to be speaking with today?
Yeah, so we're going to be speaking with Jordyn and Christian. Do you guys want to give a quick hello?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. Dreams do come true.
Yes, they do. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Awesome. And which one of you is Christian and which one is Jordyn? Because if the listeners can't see you right now.
I was going to say thank you for asking that differentiating question. This is Jordyn.
And this voice is Christian.
Perfect. Okay, we are so excited to be here. I guess we'll start off just by asking, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? Anything good, bad happening this week?
Things are going well. I'm staring at a lot of applications these days, so it's right in the thick of admission season, but really inspired by a lot of the stories that we're clawing through right now.
And for me personally, while our admission officers are busy at work reading applications, I'm looking ahead to the next cycle into planning what our outreach will look like for future cohorts.
That's very exciting. That's very exciting. Before we start, I do want to note that Christian and Jordyn are twinning right now. We currently have matching sweatshirts.
I'm jealous. Why didn't we get the memo on this?
Yeah, we
also
have the They have their Stanford KH sweatshirt, and we could have been quadruplets, but maybe next time.
It was a last minute coordination, but we will give you a heads up.
Yeah.
We were working really hard to impress you, that's why.
You're doing it already. Oh my gosh, you did not have to work hard to impress us. You already impress us. Anson, why don't you take it away and start off our questions for today?
Yeah, so before we jump into some more specific questions, we like to ask broader questions so we can get a sense of where you're coming from and how you got here. So before we talk about the world you imagine, let's talk about the world you were born into and have experienced thus far. And where are you from? What was your journey here?
All right, so I'll go ahead and dive in. These kinds of questions are always, it's like, how do you form the narrative of your life? So I'll go ahead and start off by, I was born of 2 immigrant Filipino parents. I'm a first-generation college student myself, and I grew up in a city called Bakersfield. And I really only knew Southern California. And so when I was thinking about where to apply for college, I stayed local because cost was something that was important to me. So I applied to only University of California schools. I was very fortunate to get into several options, and I chose UCLA because it was my 2 hours drive home instead of a flight to and from the Bay Area. So, but I think one of the winning factors was the marching band. So that's where I spent a lot of my time in being in the solid gold sound of the UCLA Bruin Marching Band. When I graduated, when I dove in, I was pre-med, like many first-generation college students. I later learned through a grueling series of chemistry and physics that it wasn't my calling, and that's where I discovered psychology and education. that then dovetailed into my career in higher education. I graduated in the 2008 global recession, so I sidestepped from my student job into my full-time job as an admission officer, where I embarked on the early process of higher education. And then I worked as an admission officer. Then I jumped over to the other side of the desk to be a college counselor, where I worked in China for 3 years. And then from there, I applied to grad school. And sadly, Stanford rejected me at the time. And so I ended up heading to New York for graduate school. And that's where it changed my life. New York is such a great place to ripen because you really kind of learn more about coexistence and diversity all within a very saturated space. And then after going through the pandemic, it was time to come home. And so luckily, the sister fellowship that I was working with at the time, Jordyn Scholars, there was a job posting here for Knight-Hennessy, and I applied. And when it all lined up, I was able to come back home after being 10 years away from home.
Tough story to follow up on that. I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, raised by a single mother, also first gen. So applying to school, it's kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall, if you will, just applying wherever I could. I kept my options to the West Coast, but I knew I always wanted to leave home. Don't get me wrong, Hawaii is a beautiful place to be, but I figured it was always going to be there. And so I'd try my chances at spreading my wings. And I really had my heart set on going to school in Washington State. And then I learned that I'm not that comfortable with snow.
And so tough. Yeah, that's a big move from Hawaii to Washington.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I figured, okay, well, I should probably go to the one California school I applied to. And so honestly, after visiting the campus, I went to Menlo College right here in Atherton down the road. And it was a wonderful business school, really small campus. It was much smaller than my high school, actually. It's about maybe like the entire student population is about half the size of my high school in Hawaii. But it was a really nice, intimate community, which I really appreciated. And I studied marketing and human resources. And my first on-campus job was in the admissions office, working the front desk and giving tours. After I had graduated, I really thought I was going to head into either marketing or HR. And I think like many in admission work, I kind of fell into it, and I pivoted from thinking about working in a corporate space into staying in education. And I've loved it, and I haven't left since.
Amazing. Wow. I feel like they're very unique stories, but there's a lot of similar threads between the two of you, and I'm really excited to dive into that on our episode today. I feel like you just have a sense of humility, I feel like, in you, and I feel like I'm really grateful that now you're our friendly face when we walk into Denning House. Before, maybe you were the friendly face in the admin office of wherever you were working before. But now we get to see your face every day, and I feel like you always bring so much joy and energy too.
I see Christian every morning when it comes to because oatmeal in the microwave stuff.
Do you have a specific process? What does this entail?
No, the oatmeal is a combination of steel rolled oats, cinnamon, dates, lots of nuts. It's just a protein and nutrition packed morning to start off your day.
Over here.
I feel like I'm going to need this recipe later.
We'll do.
Yeah. That's very exciting. Okay, so I think the first thing that I would like to, pull on of many of the things that we're going to be talking about, I wanted to ask about how that transition was for you, between going from, for Jordyn, of course, plays very far from home, and Christian also very far from home when coming back, etc. What was that experience like, especially as a first-generation college student? I feel like it's a big move, and your mind expands, your worldview expands. What was that like for both of you?
Yeah, I would say initially it was definitely a little nerve-wracking, delving into the unknown and not being able to, bless my parents. They tried their best to give as much support as they could, but neither one of them could kind of give any personal insight into what that journey was like going to college away from home. I think, just initially I was really nervous, but more excited than anything else. And I think the one kind of thought I had over and over was, even if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of mindset has stuck with me through the 4 years that I was in college and even till now. It's just I don't know what's next. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to be okay. Yeah. And I think that voice has definitely been my mom's voice in my head, that it's no matter what, you'll be fine. You'll pivot, you'll figure it out.
What's coming to mind for me is the evolution. I think a lot about inflection points because of how admission works. And even when you think about the prompt of connecting the dots, like how do these dots all connect when you reflect on where you've been, what the soil that you were cultivated in, and then kind of evolve throughout life. So my running from Southern California, when I was at the juncture of deciding, should I take this job to move across the Pacific, I luckily had mentors who was like, yeah, you got to go. This will always be here. And so for me, my initial, early 20s were all about running furthest away from home. I think there was a piece of my coming of age where I wasn't necessarily proud of being first generation. I wasn't proud of growing up with challenges. And so I wanted to get furthest away from home to kind of prove to the world and myself that, I'm a person of importance and consequence. And so moving to China was part of that. Grad school was the next step. And so I had mentioned going to New York City. I went to Teachers College at Columbia University. And it's funny because in my mind at the time, I was like, oh, private school, Ivy League, they'll be of this certain caliber. And I'm like, oh, these people are just like me.
Yeah,
everyone is insecure or unsure about themselves and going through challenges. And so it was a really grounding experience to be like, okay, it's just like everybody else, that how fortunate am I to be in a position where I've seen further because of the shoulders of the people who I've been able to stand on. And so now coming to this work of admission and fellowships, it's like, how do you make sure that people have the tools to feel empowered where they are? And that's why it's such an important part of me. And coming back to California reminded me that home isn't necessarily a place. It's what you carry with you through Los Angeles, Shanghai, New York, and now here in San Francisco. It's home is here, not a singular place. So people always ask, are you going to settle down here? I was like, well, the world is always going to be there. And so I'll go wherever the wind blows.
I have to ask, both the co-hosts happen to be New Yorkers.
Yeah.
So do we see New York in the future? What was your favorite part of living there?
Was supposed to be 2 years turned into 7. And I think you all
That tells
know,
the story,
yeah,
right?
it tells the story. Because, at first, the first 6 months of living in New York were tough because I was going from full-time work to grad student. I was going from somewhat of a temperate climate to cold. Here I show up with my Converse shoes. Like, are these good snowshoes? Oh, is that a winter coat? Oh, that's a cute winter coat. So it was a lot of reckoning that happened. And of course, with the snow and then Snowmageddon or whatever it was that season, I was just like, this is hard. Where it started to thaw was when communities started to form. I was part of some groups in grad school. The flowers started popping up out of the snow. Central Park, what a dream place to be able to train for a marathon. And it was it was magic. And so I fell in love with the city. I fell in love with the ease of moving from different pockets across the boroughs. So I lived in the Upper West Side to Queens and Jackson Heights to Park Slope in Brooklyn. So I really got a nice slice of the barography of the city. So it'll always be a love for me. And it'll always be a home for me too.
Yeah. Totally. I miss it too. I'm sure Sydney does as well.
I do. I will say I don't miss the snow as much, but I definitely miss New York and all my friends and family that are there. I also feel like Christian skipped over an important fun fact in New York that perhaps I heard in the grapevine at Denning, that you sang in Carnegie Hall twice. Not just once, but twice. Is that true? Or is that a rumor?
In the same year too, right?
Yeah, in the same year. Yeah, what's the story behind that?
That is true. That is one of my improbable facts, is that from what I knew, that Carnegie Hall was a once in a lifetime place to perform. And I was fortunate enough to be part of 2 incredible organizations, one being the New York City Gay Men's Chorus, where I was able to perform at the axis of activism and music. And so being a marching band kid, growing up with Glee, it was just such an important space of expression for me. And I sang in the chorus for a number of years. And then after a few years, they spun off an a cappella group. And so I was able to perform there with the New York City Gay Men's Chorus. And then after winning regionals for a cappella competition, just like the movie, it's a real thing. And so I performed for the open finals for the a cappella competition. And I was the beatboxer for the group. So I missed, shout out to Tone Hall. So that's the name of the group. And we're just a really cool group of individuals who, again, sing for the livelihoods of many others. So
You had your real life pitch perfect moment.
perfect, yes, it was.
I'm jealous. One of my improbable facts also mentioned Pitch Perfect because I was also did a cappella, but I did not perform in Carnegie Hall. So I'm a little bit jealous. I think something we're really interested in is mentorship, because all the scholars here wouldn't be here today without the people who, trusted in us before we trusted ourselves, gave us direction on how to get there. And I think both of you, when you were talking about your journeys, alluded to that. Right? I think, Jordyn, you talked about your mom giving you that sense of trust in yourself, even when you're not super sure about how to feel being in a new place. And Christian, you mentioned like going across the Pacific because of people guiding you there and trusting you. So I'm curious, today, like, who are the people who form that circle, give you that sense of self, and gave you that mentorship?
Well, I think beyond my mom, one of the first people that comes to mind for me was an elementary school teacher, Mr. Sutherland. Shout out to Mr. Sutherland. I think he's still in Hawaii teaching. But he was my teacher in 4th and 5th grade in a kind of gifted and talented program that I was lucky enough to be a part of. And he would give me, books that were like well beyond what I thought were my reading level. Like I was reading The Hobbit and Watership Down in 4th grade. And he would hand me these giant books. And I thought to myself, there's no way like this is for me. Like there's no way that I'm capable of, delving into this kind of material. And he's like, no, you can do it. Just try. And so he got me into the broadcasting background. There was a morning broadcast that we hosted in elementary school, and I learned how to do stop motion, and all of that was in elementary school. And he continued to push all of us to like delve into all of these different things. And I think without that initial like kind of gentle push of, yes, you can do it. Even if you don't think you can, just try. That was one of the, I guess, guardian angels, one of my first guardian angels, I would say. And then now, currently, I would say like it's people like Christian and Michaela, who is also in the room taking lovely photos of us. Shout out Michaela. And many others on the team, who have been kind of my behind the scenes like champions, who like, I'm very early into my career, and KH, this is my first job right out of undergrad. And so they've both been incredible, like not only thought partners and how to move forward in my career, but also just move through life. They've been incredible resources. And so I'm grateful to them both.
Yeah, I think for me, mentorship is there's so many layers to it. You can have mentors who are your exact same age who see around a different corner than you. Of course, we know mentors who are many years ahead of us, big brothers, sisters, and siblings who are ahead of us. And it's a multilateral exchange of insight. So I think that's really where there's a core mentorship relationship, that it's not just downloading everything that you know into a person, but there's actually a dialogue there. So even when listening to Jordyn reflect, I thought of all the different teachers. Mrs. Haas in 5th and 6th grade, Mr. Bolstad, my English teacher, who said, you're not going to community college, you're going to push yourself and go right into university. Like things that I wouldn't think were things that I was capable of. My first boss in my first job in college, a student coordinator, Jolene, who helped me through changing from pre-med to being in higher education. My mentors in the Gaiman's Course of Los Angeles, who helped me choose to go abroad and have courage. But so much of it is them seeing a version of you that you don't always see. And like what you said earlier, Anson, about eventually if they're telling you a version of yourself that you can't see and you learn to thaw and trust that, then you can really step into a place where you can actually make really good change and powerful contributions where you are. So shout out to all the mentors here and not here who have shaped everyone. And so I think a lot about those in rec letters and stuff in these admission files that we're reading.
Yeah, those are really beautiful words, both of you, that you said. I totally agree with everything. I feel like for me, similar to you, there were a lot of teachers who I feel push me to think outside the box, push me to extend beyond what I think I was capable of. And Jordyn, you mentioned a lot about work like behind the scenes, I guess. And I feel like in my head, like as much as I feel excited, nervous, eager to try new things and try to achieve that potential that people think I have. In the back of my head, sometimes there's also that voice that maybe like pulls you back on a little bit of a tether, being like, oh, I don't know if you're ready. I don't know if you can do it. Even if I achieve one small thing, it might say like, well, you didn't do this and stuff like that. And I was curious if, even though you have all these beautiful guardian angels on your shoulder. On the other shoulder, is there ever like a little devil, or is it always just that optimism and lovely support?
I was going to say, I wish I could say it was always that optimistic voice in the back of my head. But no, that other voice, that kind of negative inner voice, if you will, is always kind of there. And I think over the years, I've got more and more comfortable sitting with that voice and using it as a tool instead of a hindrance in the work or just in moving through life in general. Christian always says, certain emotions will tell you what's important. Your body will tell you what's important. That voice in the back of my head is like, you're not doing enough or you missed this. That just means like those things, those areas of work or community building, et cetera, whatever it might be, are important to me. And so I've begun to kind of use it as an opportunity to navigate or a compass, if you will, to point to where I want to move next.
I think my evolution going through my 20s was, I would always consider myself an extrovert and a people person and an eternal optimist. And the way that has evolved now is that optimism has to come from some kind of source. You might have heard it described as imposterism or imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon. But that voice that says, are you sure? Not sure if you're ready. You might not succeed is a grounding force. And so I think my evolution now has been about walking with that voice, that it doesn't go away, that it's about mastering the oscillation between, yes, I can be successful, but if you keep thinking that, then status quo starts to settle in and you don't innovate, to change and to evolve and iterate. And so I think it's important to be able to find that balance, to see how can I allow those two different spirits on my shoulder to convene, that it is about an integration between the light and dark. And I think that's it. So life can't be all positive and all go right, that it's trying to aim for that upward spiral where you can, knowing very well that life will happen, things will become challenging, we'll be disappointed. It's like what you do with that disappointment that I think is key to your character.
I definitely find myself comparing a lot, which can be a helpful tool sometimes, but also, with that negative inner voice is not always super helpful. But I think it's not about being, at least for myself, what I'm trying to tell myself more and more often is I don't have to be better than the person next to me. I just have to be a better version of me, even if it's incremental. And so I guess the comparison can be a helpful tool if framed in the right way, I guess.
Yeah. No, I love how both of you talk about, honestly, just reckoning with having both of those on your shoulder. I had a mentor say to me once, if you only had an angel on your shoulder, you'd have a neck cramp all the time, right? You're very imbalanced. So I love that you just have to acknowledge that as part of life. And I think that's so important, especially first job or going through grad school. All those things are so tough. One thing I'm really interested about your roles is we know the KH team is so important to the success of our scholars, and you guys help with recruiting people to apply into this program and also like picking the students who end up becoming part of this cohort, right? And future cohorts. What do you think is I guess the most interesting thing of your job that really leads to the program success and scholar success?
I think the interesting thing for me is understanding that leadership doesn't have a one typology. And I think that's really amplified when you look across the 7 graduate schools and different lived experiences, that there's not that perfect match. And so I think that there's a lot of times where one of the things that I love and is most interesting is how do you make a class and shape it is to be very different and unique, because that leveraging the delta between scholars, I think, is part of the magic. There are lots of times where scholars would meet other folks who they never would have met if it wasn't for Knight-Hennessy. And I think that's part of the magic of what we do. Of course, there are 2 of us sitting here. We're part of a larger group of people, and that readers and selectors and people who are part of this process. So that's one of the things that I love of the work that we do, that it's not just a single person. It's really a collective effort of diverse experiences, trying to think about how do they embody the pieces of our leadership model that we use for selection. So it's one that's evolving all the time. Different degree programs, the ways that arts and humanities interact with science and engineering, that's part of why this is such a special mission that we have the privilege of working on.
Absolutely. I would say the interesting part about this work for me is the people, I would say, that I get to meet along the way. I'm not yet fortunate enough to be a part of the selection process and read applications, but I get to be part of the larger outreach events, and I will answer a lot of the emails that come into the inbox, which I love. A phrase that's been shared with me is that everybody is somebody. And so even if it's in a really small interaction, I think whether it's through an email or just any way that I can be helpful, that's one of the more fulfilling parts of the work for me.
Yeah, your response also reminded me that people are all on different journeys. And so I have met students in this, being part of this fellowships world, that didn't apply until 4 or 5 years later. And you get to see that evolution. You get to see how they check in. They see and research and talk to other scholars. They talk to folks, and they also find ways to kind of understand their inflection points, that when they decide to apply that year, they give it all that they can, and then they learn whatever the response is on the other side on how to grow from that. And so I think it's a wonderful privilege to be able to build those relationships over time as we start to hear what are important for them, where do they need support, adding different events, adding different ways of communicating to make sure that we're as clear as possible about what we're looking for and how to find it, how to show that. But as you know, through our criteria, that there's not one singular way of showing that evidence. It's how are you already aligning what you do, what you're passionate about, to that framework. And so it ought to not take extra work, because you ought to already be doing something about it for the application.
Yeah, it's definitely holding space for the many stories and many different versions of journeys to Stanford. To your point, there's not a one-size-kind-of-fits-all formula about how you end up as a scholar or at Stanford. And so it's holding space for all of those different and very unique and special journeys.
I love how the two of you talk about the way that you think about leadership and all these different qualities in sculpting a cohort, because it's just so obvious when you walk into Denning House and speak to scholars that everyone really comes from a different path, whether it's like from a different part of the world or when we're just having lunch and speaking to them about their interests. It's so obvious every single day. And I feel very lucky to be here, and it's a product of both of your amazing work. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone in like all the scholars literally would be like -4% as happy, as successful as everything if it were not for the Cage team. So I do want to give a big shout out to not only Jordyn and Christian, but everyone who feels like, a second, set of family, perhaps in a home away from home. But something I also wanted to touch on was you mentioned a lot about how there's like different paths that can perhaps lead you to a certain outcome. And I was curious, both of you have similar and different paths, and both your Imagine a World statements, I feel like also have similarities and differences. I was curious what along your path caused you to be passionate about that statement and like want to make it a world that you would like to see come to life. Was there any turning point where that became more obvious for you? And also if you can just repeat your statement for the listeners to hear as well before you go ahead and explain it.
My statement is, I imagine a world where service is joyfully abundant and unconditionally given. And for me, again, this is a phrase that I've, kind of inherited from Christian. One of my North Stars is service. And I'm going to go back to my mom, and I think you're going to hear a lot about her in this episode because I just love her so much. But she, from a young age, kind of instilled in me how fulfilling service can be, and not doing it necessarily for yourself or to feel better about yourself, but just the act of giving freely is so special. And so it started with going to church, actually. We went to church every Sunday, and every week we'd volunteer in the nursery, where I got to hang out with kids and play with the little babies while their parents are in service. And so that was my first introduction to kind of volunteering. But I would say like service is just so important to me, because I may not be the person that's going to find a cure for something, or I may not, make it to the moon and be an astronaut, but I want to uplift the people that can and who will and who have those talents. And so even if it's behind the scenes, the small or big acts of uplifting others. And I think going back to what Christian said, knowing that you're standing on the shoulders of everyone that's come before you and trying to pass that on.
Yes, we're our ancestors' wildest dreams, right? For my statement, which is imagine a world where everyone feels empowered to lead change in the world around them, comes from the skill set that I possess that has been forged over my life, which is both a combination of storytelling and relationship building. The reason why I picked those specific words is inclusion is one of my North Stars, about trying to think about who's not here yet. How do we make sure that we have as many perspectives around the table? What are the channels to which everybody is heard? is about trying to restore agency in folks to lead where they are, that you don't have to have a title to lead where you are, that it's shown through behaviors. And so I want to use my skills to help empower others, that they actually have a say. There's always a choice somewhere in the calculus where you're making a choice on how you're choosing to hear it, how you're choosing to act on it. And so it is about trying to restore agency. And whatever realities play out, you then make a choice on how you want to respond and react to that. So I don't always listen to my own advice, but I'm really good at giving it to other people. Yeah. And so whether it be grad school or a mentee who's applying to a scholarship program or anything about grad school or jobs, I think it's just really important to think about the range of combinations of what you can control amidst all the stuff that we cannot. So I think that's why it's really important for me to underscore those pieces and, change the world to be a better place. So that's why I love this podcast so much, because it is us reaching and envisioning together, but then also what are the steps to get there? And that's where agency is such a foundational piece to that.
Yeah, I resonate with both of those so much. Jordyn, I want to start with you first with some follow-ups. I think something that's really beautiful about the way you frame service is that service should be unconditional as well. And you talk about your mom, and we're going to go back to your mom again.
Yeah.
But I think for just like regular people, you're really busy with your own lives. There's so much going on, and you want to help those around you. Like, how do you think about that, trying to put that unconditionalness into acts of service for others and uplifting others, to be able to like provide service to others and uplift others, even when you're, going through, hard times yourself and have a ton of things on your plate?
Absolutely. I would say I think very similar to Christian, energized by people. Mm-hmm. I distinctly remember an immersion weekend experience where I was just so physically tired that I think part of the team wanted to send me home because they were just so worried that I wasn't getting enough sleep. But in talking to a few finalists who are now scholars, maybe just 5 or 10 minutes of conversation, I was just completely like revamped and ready to go for the rest of the weekend. And so I think I pick up the energy in being able to just connect with other people, even if it's over something small, like how their day is going or what they're working on. I find joy in being able to hold space for other people, and that energizes me to do the work, because it's not necessarily that I need to do this work for me. It's like I'm seeing further down the line, even if it's small impacts incrementally, that my service, it's in service of others and not of self.
It's beautiful. And we totally feel the effects of that. So thank you so much. Christian, I think one thing you've been talking about, especially in the last year, is that you've been able to travel a lot to a ton of different places. And you talk about inclusion and finding those people from paths that are maybe not as typical to come to places like Stanford, to Knight-Hennessy. What do you think the role of like going in person and reaching out to those people plays in drawing these like less traditional applicants to come to Stanford?
Yeah, I consider it an honor and a privilege to be able to carry the banner of Stanford to places beyond the horizon. I had the opportunity to go from East Asia to Latin America in this past year and further solidified that leadership, as it's shaped in all these different contexts, that it is about this, it echoes our multicultural mission, that you want to broaden how you see the world because it's not for everybody, that there are different ways where leadership in one context is being on a stage at a podium, and leadership in another context is sitting in a circle on the ground. And I think that being able to empower students to be able to honor whatever that version is and to contribute that, I think a lot about, yes, what are they doing to fit the culture, but also what are they adding to the culture as well? That we want to provide the different frameworks or words of advice on how to preserve that cultural core. I'll be looking to going to South Asia this year and be able to echo some of these teachings. The application workshops we now host was coming from places that don't have offices that support scholarships and staff that have applications. And so there is not only literally a distance travel, there's also just resources and abilities. So I just find it really important that if given the same tools, people can fly. And so being able to be a person to get there. As much as it's draining on the body, there are some times where I'm less than 48 hours in a country. When I crossed through Lima, Peru, I was like, Machu Picchu's right there, but I can't stop. I got to go to Chile. And so it's both gutting, and I'm grateful to be able to get out there on the front lines. And as we know, there's no replacement for engaging people in person. We know that there's stuff that is communicated, yes, beyond Zoom, but the body also shows a lot of that too. So it has been the thrill of a lifetime to be able to get to these places that I've never been. And I'm lucky. I count myself lucky.
I'm so in support of these in-person events. I mean, I'm from New York, so it wasn't like I'm from a different country, but I remember going to the in-person session that y'all held in New York City, and I think that was the moment I decided to apply, because before that, I didn't trust that it was possible or it was something that was in my trajectory. But there really is no replacement for seeing like there were existing like current scholars there. John and Tina were there. You and Rachel were there. It was very inspiring.
It makes it very real when you have a representative. And so we're trying to find ways to connect dots with other entities of Stanford, the Alumni Association. Oh my gosh, the Alumni Association, when I went out to East Asia this year, to Korea, Japan, and China, they were just really, I saw the future of Knight-Hennessy in talking to these people, because they were just really incredible and hospitable and just were reaching for some bigger purpose. So I'm excited. I know our program's only 8 years old, but it is already on track to really make some waves in the world.
I hope so. I mean, we have people like Jordyn and Christian, leading us. I feel like it's inevitable. Something that you both touched upon, I feel like, was having that like access to resources and trying to equal like level the playing ground as much as you can, even if some people, require a little bit of an extra push, just as we all had, growing up when we had people push us to push those boundaries further than we thought we would be able to go. But something, I guess, to transition as we think about closing up this episode, although I could talk to you forever and ever, is what is like a common ground and foundation for people in Knight-Hennessy once they're here, and that is improbable facts. Because when you're applying, whether you're going to be on the KH team or you're going to be a scholar, we ask people to give a list of 8 improbable facts. These are things that are true about you, but someone might not know. And so I was curious if either of you two had one or more improbable facts that you'd be willing to share. And yeah, I'll leave it to you. Say whatever you would like.
So for a quick context, the team does this for anyone who starts on the team. So no, we share our own improbable facts, which I think is part of the fun culture code, that when a new team member comes in, we have a meal and we all share our own improbable facts. So it is one of those things that we love maintaining the culture of Knight-Hennessy, but I'll have Jordyn go first.
Oh, on the spot here. Okay, let's see. One improbable fact is that I can 3-prong spearfish.
Whoa.
And at one time, I could hold my breath for 3 minutes. I don't think I can anymore, so it's a little out of date, but I haven't tried in a minute. But I really enjoy being in water. Like the ocean is my happy place. I remember doing a code plunge at Sierra Camp, and that was fun. I just really enjoy being in water.
Yeah.
So what kind of fish were you catching?
Let's see. There's a good, I only know the Hawaiian names for this. So uhu is like a parrotfish. And then there's ama, which I don't know what the other name for that is. But I started going with my dad and my grandpa. And they're the ones who taught me how to do it. But initially, I was the one that had to hold on to the buoy that had the string of all the fish that they caught. So they didn't let me try spearfishing right away. So I had to earn my stripes, if you will, and hold on to the buoy for a year or two.
Yeah, work your way up. I heard that there's also another, perhaps Hawaiian tradition that you are very talented at, that is related to dancing. You don't have to say if you don't want to. You can cut this. But I do want to plug and say that I've heard from around Denning that you are an incredible hula dancer. Is that true?
I don't know about incredible. I feel like incredible is
yes,
maybe.
you are.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll receive that. Thank you both. Actually, that's a second improbable fact is I danced hula at the opening of the Apple store in Waikiki.
Wow.
When I was younger. So I started dancing at around 5 or 6. I'll preface this by saying I'm not Native Hawaiian, but I've grown up my entire life around many Kanaka or Native Hawaiians. My half-sister is Native Hawaiian as well, and so is my roommate. And so it's just being immersed in the culture, Native Hawaiian culture in Hawaii. Dance or hula is a big part of it. And similar to my love for the water, I think dancing hula is also a place of respite for me. Like everything kind of just melts away. I forget who's in the audience or what I'm dancing for. It's kind of, you get lost in it, which I think Christian can probably speak to as a performer as well.
Yeah. I mean, you heard some of my improbable fact already about when I was performing. So being in admissions, and for UCLA in particular, I got a few opportunities to engage with celebrities because they're in Hollywood. So one of my improbable facts is I gave a college presentation to Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, who was in the audience during one of my presentations. And I also gave a campus tour to Hugh Laurie. He's the actor who plays House MD. And so it's also admission related. I love this question about improbable facts because it helps you question what is improbable to you. So I very much could say that I'm a first generation college student. I ran a marathon to celebrate my 30th birthday, but it's having a combination of being able to think of what makes you unique, what is making you special, what surprises people. So I hope in the spirit of sharing these that it takes the edge off, that it doesn't have to be some wild discovery or achievement, that it could be something as simple as just who you are and sharing those different aspects of you.
Great. I love that we have that tradition as like the team, that if we were going to ask that of you as scholars and as applicants, like it's also a good time for us to reflect on asking ourselves like what improbable facts we have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably my favorite part of the application. And I feel like after writing so many, I'll say boring PhD statements about what research I've done and what I want to do, I was very, very happy to be able to have to sit and think and process about like, what does it mean for me? And some were very silly and some were more serious. And I really love that tradition. And it's a great icebreaker as well when you're coming in person for immersion weekend or for when you actually start being a KH scholar. And so on the topic of questions, our last segment will be our rapid fire questions. And so these are questions that you will have ideally one sentence to answer. Hopefully it'll be a great experience. But of course, if there's any you don't want to answer, like we're happy to move on to the next one. Benson, do you want to start? Kick it off?
Right. We're gonna start pretty easy. This is just a factual question. Okay. How many siblings do you have, if any?
I have one sister.
3.
Okay, next question. Oh, Christian, this might be hard for you. What's a country that you haven't visited yet but would like to?
Oh, so many.
Yeah, you traveled so much.
Norway. That's where my partner's family lineage is from. So I'd love to go to Scandinavia and see Norway.
I have not yet been to Europe at all.
Yeah.
And I would love to go to Ireland or Scotland.
What is your spirit animal?
First one that comes to mind for me is a dragon, because my Chinese zodiac is the dragon.
First that came to mind was a manta ray. I can't swim, but I want to fly. And so that's kind of the middle ground of what it looks like flying underwater. So I love manta rays.
Yeah. Not yet.
Not yet, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, this one I really, really like is if a song started playing every time that you walked into Denning House, what song would it be?
It's like your anthem as you walk up the stairs, you know?
Lose My Breath, Destiny Child.
I love it.
For some reason, like my mind goes to like just a Bee Gees song. I don't know why. I grew up like with listening to oldies music in the living room with my grandpa. Now I'm like blanking on titles.
It could just be vibes too, you know? A beachy vibe song. That's perfect.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, that's my answer.
Sydney, would it be bad if we made them sing
Oh my
their
God.
song choice right now?
Okay, I'm not a singer, but Christian is a wonderful singer.
And
Maybe
way
Christian
out
can
of touch.
sing and
Way
then
out of
Jordyn
touch.
can dance.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect, because our lovely audience can't see.
We'll get that on the video next time, right?
Yeah. We'll make this a video episode now just for this part.
Part 2, right?
Insert short clip here.
Exactly. Okay, we have 2 more questions for you, Omar. Right?
I know we're sort of in the deep of admissions reading season right now. And Jordyn, you're planning for the next admissions season. What is your go-to snack or drink of choice as a little pick-me-up on those tougher days?
Ooh. I would say mine is kombucha. I love a good kombucha. And to me, it's I don't feel as guilty about drinking it as I would like soda, but it's a nice like option.
Yeah, oat milk latte. That's a tongue twister. Is usually my go-to at a coffee shop, and I like nuts and cheese. That's my snacks, like a little mouse.
Okay. This is our final rapid fire question. What is something that you wish scholars knew about the KH admin team?
I would say I wish that scholars knew.
We can say
just in
scholars or
general.
anyone in general.
Yeah, I think one of the things I wish people knew is that we're so passionate about the work that we also not put pressure on ourselves, but there is a weight that we carried knowing how important this opportunity is for so many people. And so we don't take that role lightly. And so I'd say we are trying to be really intentional and are really intentional about the whole admission process. And so like applicants and all the scholars are very important to us. And so we think long and hard about it and very passionate about the work.
Yeah, my ad is that the team is not a monolith, and that just like the scholar community is just so diverse to get to know all of us. We might be heads down work or busy running around behind the scenes, but we're also humans that thrive on connection. And so it's one of those things that gives wind to our sails, is knowing how many different missions are upstairs, personal missions of what they're working towards, worlds that they're wanting to realize, that we're also part of that creation. And so come get to know us, tap us on the shoulders.
Coffee lunch.
Coffee lunch, that we're also eager to sit down and get to know and exchange stories as well. So it's just a wonderful pleasure to be part of this community.
I love that. I love it. All right. As we wrap up, last final sort of question. We just want to give you the space to talk about anything you want. I know we already said anything you want scholars to know, but literally anything, another fact, a fun fact.
Something we didn't touch upon in this episode that you really wanted to say, a shout out to someone specific, whatever your heart desires.
The first thing that came to my mind is that Christian and I are both Filipino, and I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like in part of being under Christian's mentorship, if you will, I've also kind of reconnected with my Filipino heritage, which Hawaii is such a big melting pot, but I'd never really felt like I connected specifically to my Filipino ancestors as I have in the time since I've known Christian. And so thank you for that gift.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into my kind of piece of like sitting back in the soil that I was cultivated in. Here at Stanford, we're at such a special place that there is a world beyond Denning House. And so I've had the wonderful privilege of creating more coalition with other team members across campus. And so I invite all scholars and people about how to create those connections, whether you're a scholar yourself, or you have connections, like how do we positively change and work together? I think is like kind of my final like zoom out, that there's just so much magic on this campus that we got to aim it all in the same direction towards really solving those challenges. So even now, as sitting into looking at my third year here, I'm finally getting I'm finally feeling oriented to what's out here. And so all the different research centers and grant opportunities, it's simple as opening up and finding that common ground. And so yesterday was a great example at the artist talk of seeing different members across campus come to celebrate the creation and interrogation of what forces are in the world. And there's just some of my favorite events that are open to the larger campus. So let's keep on inviting people into this coalition to really make a change and not only imagine a world, but see the world that we want to be in.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What a beautiful way to end the show. I am so grateful to Anson for being the first.
You got it.
So many firsts.
Yeah, this is really exciting. And then, of course, Jordyn and Christian for taking a big chunk of your day and very busy work-life admission cycle to speak with us, to share your story, to be very vulnerable and show the world like how you are making the world a better place in every single way possible. So I'm very grateful for you all, for your time, for your energy, for the love that you give. And we hope that this is a first of many KH admin team episodes. So
yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, friends.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Imagine the World, where we hear from inspiring members of the KHS community who are making significant contributions in their respective fields, challenging the status quo and pushing the boundaries of what is possible as they imagine the world they want to see.
This podcast is sponsored by Knight-Hennessy Scholars at Stanford University, a multidisciplinary, multicultural graduate fellowship program providing scholars with financial support to pursue graduate studies at Stanford while helping equip them to be visionary, courageous, and collaborative leaders who address complex challenges facing the world. Follow us on social media at Knight-Hennessy and visit our website at kh.stanford.edu to learn more about the program and our community.